Because of AI, universities and colleges are bringing in oral exams. This is to ensure that students are assessed on their own knowledge and learning, not just submitting material they've generated by AI. However, most students, kids really, have never done oral exams, and many of you might even be nervous, terrified about it. I mean, how do you sound smart and knowledgeable about very technical topics, whether that's American history or math, science, chemistry, drama? It could be anything. And added to that, there are some lecturers, professors, tutors who can be a little intimidating. To make it even worse, for people who are shy, reserved, maybe anxious, or even neurodiverse, the fear of oral exams might even be absolutely paralyzing. Well, today I want to show you how to turn the technology that's causing this shift in the assessment in higher education, how you can turn AI into your training partner for surviving an oral exam. So stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll have the tools, the skills, and the knowledge to be able to use AI as your own personal tutor to train and practice for oral exams. Let's make it so. First up, you're going to need access to an AI system that has voice mode. Once you've got that, you'll be set. The process I'm going to explain to you will work irrespective of whether you're using Claude, ChatGPT, or Google Gemini. There's a number of steps you have to go through to do this. I'm going to explain to you the steps, and then I'll give you a demonstration of what it looks like in practice. Step 1. Gather 3 types of documents. What you need to bring together is the oral exam rubric. That's the criteria that assesses you on your actual oral exam. Your course, university, or program should have some kind of rubric for what makes a good oral exam. You'll also need the course syllabus. That's the content of what's going to be covered during your exam, or at least the part of your course that the oral exam is going to cover. And then third, you want the exam instructions themselves. In most programs, most courses, they'll have a process, something transparent, something they'll tell you in advance about what to expect when you do an oral exam, what's going to take place, how do they conduct the oral exam. You want to get that as well. The second step is to take those 3 documents, the oral exam rubric, the course syllabus, and the actual exam instructions, and upload them into an AI chat. Don't just paste summaries, paste the actual info itself, the specific rubrics. The specific wording of the assessment criteria is what makes the feedback you'll get from the AI useful later. If you give it vague input, you're only going to get vague feedback at the end. Step 3, set the scene, okay? Tell the AI clearly what you want. Tell it, you are my oral examiner for my course on American history in the 17th century, or whatever it is you're doing. Using the syllabus and exam instructions I've given you, ask me a question one at a time from the 10-question format. Wait for my spoken answer before moving to the next question. Now, that last instruction matters. You want a real test, not to imagine that you've got a tutor holding your hand. So try simulate this and make it as realistic as possible. Then step 4, switch to voice mode and actually speak. Now, this is an important part. You can't simulate this by typing everything in. Remember, you're practicing for an oral exam, so you need to give an oral answer. Get the AI to orally ask you the question and then give an oral response. That means you've got to turn on the app's voice mode, say your answers out loud, exactly as you would in a real oral exam. The whole value of this exercise is training your mouth to work in conjunction with your brain, so the answers that come out are coherent, compelling, and show what it is that you've learned, because that's the purpose of the oral exam. You get to demonstrate that you actually have learned something from the course you've taken. Step 5 is get assessed by the AI based on the rubric you've provided. Once you've gone through all of the questions, between, 1 to 10, ask the AI directly, now, assess my performance against the rubric I gave you, go through each criterion and tell me where I met it, where I fell short, and what a stronger answer would have included. because you gave the AI the rubric, the actual wording you're assessed on up front. It means the feedback you're given will be answered in real assessment criteria. It's not going to be generic like, good job, crack on, bravo, keep going. No, you're going to get specific feedback from the AI based on the rubrics you've uploaded. Step 6 is to do it again, repeat. Rehearsal works with repetition, run it a second time later in the day or 2 days later, focusing on the questions where you're perhaps the weakest. The goal isn't to memorize a script, it's to make the format, an oral exam format, feel familiar and comfortable. So when you go into the live oral exam, it doesn't feel like it's the first time you've done this. It's not the first time you've been quizzed orally on the content, albeit by an AI program rather than a living human being. This, I think, will help you relax more and feel a less sense of intimidation and pressure when you have to go to the actual oral exam. So let me give you an example of an oral exam I did with ChatGPT about the Roman Empire in the 3rd century. Hi ChatGPT, I want to practice for an oral exam on the Roman Empire in the 3rd century. I want this exam to be at AQF level 9, which is a master's level, and I want you to test breadth of knowledge and then give me one follow-up question. After that, I want you to assess my answer based on the AQF level 9 rubrics and assign me a grade at the very end. Also, my answer can last no longer than 4 minutes.
Let me set that up. I've got the format and rubric in mind, and I'll use the provided validation rubric instead of a generic marking scheme, but I'm still shaping the opening question so it matches that standard cleanly. Your first question is, assess the 3rd century crisis in the Roman Empire, roughly 235 to 284 CE. Explain how political instability, military pressures, economic and monetary change, regional fragmentation, and religious or social developments interacted. Then critically appraise whether crisis is the best overall interpretation, drawing on relevant ancient evidence and modern scholarship.
Okay, the period from 235 to 284 saw a series of political crises. You could argue this really began with the Severan dynasty, which had transformed the imperial office effectively into a military autocracy. From Augustus to Marcus Aurelius, the emperor, who was kind of an autocrat but nonetheless ruled in participation with the elite class, with the senatorial and the equestrian order. Whereas in the Severan dynasty, the Roman Empire had really become an emperor backed by an army. And certainly with, Severus Alexander, when he was deemed to be a failure and no longer fit for purpose in the eyes of the army, he was dispatched, and that's when you get the period of the barracks emperors, where you simply have the imperial office held by whoever is the most powerful and successful general at a given time. So if some general wins a battle on the Rhine, the Danube, against the Sassanids on the Persian frontier, that then becomes a license to usurp the existing power and launch a coup and take the reins of power because got a bigger army and and if one feels the ability to take over, enrich your soldiers, and fight whatever battles you can, which are just opportunities for plunder and taking booty. Now, that led to a series of coups and counter coups where a successful general would knock over the uh, uh, stand-in emperor, and then it would continue. And that created a lot of instability with this constant kind of Game of Thrones that typified the empire during this time. Another problem was monetary instability. In order to pay for these ravenous armies, their constant desire for booty, loot, and donatives, they had to increase taxation. They also had to devalue the coinage. And that created inflation, becoming so bad at points that they needed to create payments in kind. The attempts to introduce price controls on various things completely backfired and had no good. And even when they printed money that was of some value, there is the principle that good money drives out bad money drives out good money, so that people hoarded their high quality coins and they continued using the coinage of lesser value. You also have the Cyprianic plague during this time. There's a debate as to where the plague came from, whether it came from Egypt or it came from somewhere north of the Danube. I think Susan Hubner has argued the case well that the Cyprianic plague probably came from north of the Danube, and it seemed to have been some sort of hemorrhagic fever that ravaged the empire, thinned out the population, was particularly lethal in the major population centers, and that created a problem because no sooner had the empire recovered from the effects of the Antonine plague in the 2nd century, it had to deal with the Cyprianic plague in the 3rd century. This was also a time of religious revolution. There was a sort of tendency towards a pagan monotheism, hence the increase in popularity of the cult of Sol Invictus and also the rise of Christianity during this time. There were numerous persecutions of Christians that added further instability, particularly under Decius and then later under Diocletian. Decius, of course, died at the hands of the Goths, and Valerian was captured by Shapur I in Persia. And after that, the Gallic Empire ripped off the eastern arm of the empire away with the control of Gaul, Spain, and Britannia under a new regime. And likewise, in the east, the Palmyrene Empire emerged during this time as well, especially under Queen Zenobia. And figures like Gallienus and Claudius II were really left with nothing more than defending northern Italy and Thrace. And I would argue, with a number of scholars I think would agree, that this was a real fall of the Roman Empire. It wasn't just a crisis, it fell apart. The Gallic and Palmyrene empires had effectively ripped apart the two theatres, eastern and western, of the empire away. Uh, During this time, it's also like a lot of regional instability, expelled particularly along the frontiers, although a number of scholars do point out that the crises of the 3rd century were not evenly distributed. Parts of Britain were, doing fairly well. Yes, there were the problem with the Pictish tribes in the north, but for the most part, they were doing okay. North Africa was relatively unstable. You had a slight rebellion of Gordian I and Gordian II, but parts of North Africa were somewhat unscathed from the crises that affected the regions around the Danube and the Persian frontier. I think it would be the case that it was with the military acumen and the organizational abilities of Aurelian and Diocletian that the empire begins to emerge from the crisis or the instability or the basic collapse of the empire in the 260s, and it begins to be put back together again. But there's a lot of adaptation, there's a lot of change, and certainly by the time you get to Constantine and the Great in the 4th century, you could say that the empire militarily, culturally, religiously, economically, looks very different than it did under the Severan dynasty. And that concludes my answer.
Assessed against the AQF Level 9 rubric, this is a distinction, strong breadth, clear thesis, and genuine synthesis with historiography. Some points need tightening, though, because a few claims and datings drifted. Overall, persuasive and well structured. For a higher distinction, anchor each claim in precise evidence and state the limits of that evidence explicitly.
Hey, that wasn't bad. I'm glad I passed because, I've literally just written a book on the Roman Empire in the 3rd century. It's called Imperium, coming out with Baylor University Press in October. Please go and buy a copy. It'll be great. But yeah, that was a good exercise. So hopefully, what I did there gives you a sense of what it's like to use AI as a practice run for an actual oral exam, and hopefully it'll enable you to get into the craft, the skill of doing oral exams, and you'll feel more comfortable, more confident with doing oral exams because, for a lot of people, this is a new scary thing that's been thrust into their lives in higher education. But let me now give you a couple of extra tips that can make your training and preparation for oral exams even better to make sure you're using AI as an actual training run rather than just a fun gimmick that you're toying around with. Here's what you need to do. First of all, time yourself. If your oral exam limits your answers to a certain time frame, maybe it's 2 minutes per question or 5 minutes, whatever it is, make sure you time yourself or tell the AI to give you time limits in your answers. A second thing that will really help you if you practice pausing. It's okay to say, let me think for a moment, or give me a second. Collect your thoughts, put them in the right order, and then, present them in the most compelling and coherent way you can. Don't be embarrassed by silences. It's better to be quiet for a moment, think about what you're going to say, then say it, rather than just machine gun every thought that comes into your mind out of your mouth with a kind of rat-a-tat-a-tat. So, you know, don't be afraid to slow down, take your time, and come up with a better quality answer rather than just generating all the words that come out of your mind and mouth at that very moment. So practice pauses.
Hey, thanks for watching AI for Academics. This is the program where I try to show administrators, professors, students how AI is, for better or worse, affecting tertiary education and the world of university research. If this video was useful, then please subscribe for more on the world of AI and education. Drop me a comment telling me how you use AI at your school and whether you found this approach useful to getting you to prepare to do an oral exam. Otherwise, until next time, take care. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.